Welcome to Alive to Thrive, 21 tools to pursue your passions fiercely and confidently. My name is Mihaela Dorina, and I'm your host during this interview series. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with Elizabeth Yang. Elizabeth, welcome.
Thank you, Mihaela, for having me today. It's a pleasure to be on with you.
Yeah, it's so nice to have you to switch the conversation a little bit and get your perspective on things. But before we dive into our conversation, let me tell you a little bit about Elizabeth. Elizabeth Yang is the CEO and founder of Yang Law Offices. She has been practicing law since 2007 and specializes in intellectual property law, including patent, copyright, and trademark prosecution, and litigation, business law, and estate planning. She was awarded the Top 100 Civil Lawyers Award, Top 40 Lawyers Under 40 Award by the National Trial Lawyer Association, recognized by Thomson Reuters Super Lawyer as a rising star, ranked the top 2.5% of lawyers in California, presented with the Lawyers of Distinction Award, recognizing her as the top 10% of lawyers in the United States. Wow. In 2017, she started publishing best-selling books such as The Big Secret alongside Jack Canfield, author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, Stress-Free Divorce, to assist parties going through their difficult times, The Authorities, Powerful Wisdom from Leaders in the Field, Women in the Modern Business World, Social Marriage, and Asian Women Who Boss Up. That is quite impressive, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I like to start asking everyone this question as we're exploring things that our passions and our desires. And I'm curious if you could share with us what makes you so passionate about the work that you do.
Well, I actually got into the work that I do because of personal experiences. I was an intellectual property attorney when I first started practicing law, and I went through my own divorce. It was a very complicated divorce, took 4 years to complete, very expensive, very stressful. And after my personal experience, I decided to expand my law firm into family law. And actually, during my 4-year divorce, my friends who knew I was going through the process, they started coming to me asking for advice to help with their divorce and their family law issues. And one thing led to another, and pretty soon my practice got more inundated with divorce cases than with intellectual property law cases. So fast forward to now, our law firm is about 80% family law. And it's very rewarding to be able to use my personal experience to support others that are going through this very challenging time. They say divorce is one of the most challenging times in life, and it is. So, our clients are very emotional, very stressed out, and especially when there's child custody issues. That's when it's most rewarding because we know we're making an impact in not only the parties' lives, but in the next generation's lives.
Absolutely. Yeah, I always find it interesting. Most of our guest speakers have come to their work because of personal experiences, and it's just nice to see how when you do something that you're passionate about and create your work out of that, it seems to be really fulfilling and meaningful. And that you also have the perspective of having gone through that experience and being able to integrate that in your work with clients.
Yeah, and I think a lot of clients, they prefer someone who knows how they feel like. I'm able to tell them, like, I know exactly what it feels like to be in your shoes because I was in your shoes one day, sitting across the table from another attorney and trying to get the best advice possible and navigate through the difficult process of a divorce. So I know how it's like. I had paperwork in my bedroom at one point, all related to my own divorce case. And they're very appreciative that I can relate to how they're feeling.
Absolutely. That's very important to, to be able to trust someone and feel like you can relate to them and they can relate to you and what you're going through.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm curious, Elizabeth, what do you see are most of the common reasons why women especially get divorced?
Well, the top three reasons for divorce nowadays, number one is finances.
Mm,
The parties either didn't communicate about finances before they got married, or they're growing apart on finances as the marriage proceeds, or there's a lack of appreciation for what they bring to the table. So finances is definitely the number one issue. Number two issue is infidelity. That's a expected one. And the third one is in-laws. Either the wife's parents are involved or the husband's parents are involved. But when in-laws get too close and too closely involved in a marriage, it's typically bad news. So
mm,
my advice for everyone is to have in-laws stay out of the marriage and make each other the priority over parents, even over children. It's really important to make your spouse your number one priority and not make anyone above them.
mm. It's really good advice.
Yeah, a lot of people after they start having children, they unfortunately make their children priority. And the other person ends up feeling unappreciated, unwanted, unvalued. And it leads to a lot of marital issues, which then in turns, affects the relationship with the children. So it's important to make the spouse first and then children come after.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, so from either your experience or your work or both, what is there anything that you wish women knew or did before getting to divorce?
Absolutely. So, I like you mentioned in my intro, I published a book during the pandemic called Social Marriage, and it's something that I not only preach but I also practice. My husband and I are socially married, and we came up with this philosophy because both of us have been through the marriage institution and both of us are divorced. And as someone who sees people getting divorces day in and day out, I started analyzing the institution of marriage, and I realized, this is something that human beings created. And in fact, it was created during the Middle Ages when there was a need for this institution. Women back in the day could not own any property without being married. So they had to get married in order to get rights to own property through their husbands. Men, on the other hand, needed to get married because there was no way to prove that children belonged to them. There was no DNA test back then. The science was not advanced enough. So they had to get married to be like, yeah, these are my offspring and they can
Mm,
take over my assets once I die. So they needed to have this marriage to help them. Nowadays, these two reasons are no longer intact because women can own property, we have equal rights, and men have DNA tests, and they can actually have child custody rights with or without being married in today's law. So the only reason that people still get married is because it's the traditional thing to do. It's like my parents did it, my grandparents did it. It's been this way for as long as I know. So it's like quote unquote the right thing to do, or
yeah.
religious reasons, which also stem from tradition. So a lot of millennials, they have this pressure of tradition, of following and obeying tradition from their parents, and they feel like they have to, but then they see how divorce is just not working out in today's modern society. In fact, in Los Angeles, 70% of marriages end in divorce. So the majority of marriages by a long shot is not working out. And so the millennials are stuck between a rock and a hard spot. They're like, I need to get married because otherwise I have all this pressure. But on the other hand, I'm so scared because my chances, my odds of success are not very high. So, we came up with this philosophy, social marriage. You can be married, be husband and wife, do everything together, own property together. You can have a joint bank account together. You can have children together, but just don't sign the legal license that will make you basically have to submit to the ever-changing divorce laws of the government. The laws are changing all the time. And even as a divorce attorney, I have to go through continuing legal education in order to keep up with the laws. How is a layperson who has no legal knowledge supposed to keep up with the laws? And in fact, most people who sign the legal license, they don't know the family law code. They don't know how alimony is calculated. How much spousal support am I going to get, if I were to leave this person? How is community property designated? How is separate property designated? All of these questions, people usually have no clue. So essentially, entering into a legal divorce, a legal marriage is like signing a legal contract without knowing what the terms are or reading the terms. Right? Why would anyone want to sign a contract without reading the terms? But that's basically what everybody is doing when they're getting legally married. It's
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this is kind of a new concept for me too. So are you referring to like a prenup kind of agreement, or just not getting legally married?
So a prenup is a legal document that is signed in anticipation of getting married. If someone wants to sign an agreement outside of the legal marriage, like let's say they want to be socially married, they can sign an agreement. It would just be called something different. It's called a palimony agreement. And in a palimony agreement, the two parties will agree, if we ever split up and break up, then we're going to get this amount of support. So whoever is the one who's choosing to stay at home and give up their job and not work, they're going to be able to know exactly how much the other party will pay them through not alimony. Alimony is spousal support, but palimony. Palimony is paying your spousal, your socially married partner, pal, how much support they will get. So it's very clear exactly how much they will get. And then in terms of assets, that's really simple. Whatever property is purchased under both parties' names is community property. If they were to split up, it's just like you own a house with a friend, or a business partner. You split it however much you bought it in for, 50-50, 70-30, whatever the split is. And if you buy property in your own name, then it's your separate property. You don't have to go through any complicated calculations. In a regular divorce, if you acquire marriage in a legal marriage, regardless of whether you buy it in your name or your husband's name or your wife's name, it's just going to be some kind of calculation. How much is community? How much is separate? And then people end up having to spend a lot of money on lawyers, on forensics accountants, on experts to determine, if they can't reach an agreement with their spouse. So much simpler in a social marriage.
Yeah, that's a very interesting concept. And anything else that goes with that idea of social marriage?
The other thing is communication. It's very important for partners, whether they're choosing the legal marriage route or the social marriage route, to talk about their finances. It's not just assets, it's also debts. Because in a legal marriage, a lot of people don't know that debts is also community. So if your spouse goes out and racks up a bunch of debt with creditors attached, the creditors can go after you regardless of whether you knew about the debt or not. So even if you have no idea, you didn't give your spouse permission to go and gamble, or take out loans, you're responsible. And even if you were to get a divorce, the creditors could still come after you. So social marriage will protect in all those circumstances. You talk about things with your spouse, you reach an agreement. There's no assumptions, or hypotheticals like, oh, I'm assuming if I get a divorce, I'm gonna get 50% of everything, or I'm assuming that they're gonna pay me support, so I'm gonna live a comfortable life. And then they find out it's not reality.
Yeah, or I'm assuming that I'm getting married, and if I should know something, my partner would tell me about it before I do that.
Exactly. Yeah, or I'm
Of their
assuming my
dad,
partner's,
especially.
yeah, it's all based on trust. And
Mhm.
and the other thing is life expectancy has changed so much. Back in the days when marriage was first created, life expectancy was way less. So a lot of times people will get into arguments, disputes, and then they're about to die, and then, done. But nowadays, people are living there. It's very common for people to live to 100 years old nowadays, and it continues going up with technology, with science, with medicine improvements. So it's going to be a lot more to make a relationship last that long, that much longer. And it's going to take a lot more planning, communication, all that to make sure it works. And that's why, all this talk is very important.
Yeah, communication.
Yes.
So what are some of the reasons that you see, especially in divorces that get difficult, really litigious, drawn out, you know?
Well, child custody is something that
Mhm.
probably takes the most time, because child custody and child support, which is based on child custody, is not something that you make an order, the judge makes an order, or you make an agreement, and it's done. Child custody and child support can be changed anytime until the child turns 18. Or if at 18, if the child is still in school, let's say they haven't graduated high school yet, then until 19. The child support can go on longer after 18. So that is something where parties really have to communicate and learn to co-parent. If they don't communicate, they don't co-parent, it could be a very long 18 years. I've
Mhm.
had clients go back to court every 6 months because something small came up and they can't figure it out on their own, and they need a judge to get involved and make orders for them. They go back to court again, and imagine how much money they spent having to hire an attorney, or paying all the legal fees, even paralegal fees, to go back to court on every small thing. So that could be 18 years of litigation if they don't
Yeah.
get along with their ex.
Well, and I'm curious if you see like any underlying emotional patterns in those cases.
Definitely a lot of underlying emotional patterns. And most people who become parents, they don't take very extensive parenting courses. It's sort of like, here's, you got pregnant, do your best. Now you have a title of a mom, now you have a title of a dad, but you never got any education other than seeing what our parents did for us. So it's very emotional, and sometimes a lot of this stems from childhood, how we saw mom and dad raise us when we were children, and or mom and dad, they saw their mom and dad, or grandparents do it, but doesn't mean it was the right way. Everyone just does the best they can, and now they have to deal with all these issues of not just raising children, but also divorce, separation, and dealing with an ex that they don't like anymore. They've already chosen, I don't want to be with this person, and still have to learn how to co-parent with this person. So it's very, very challenging and stressful.
Yeah. So is that pretty much the main reason why you see divorces drag on for years?
Well,
Child.
that's one of the main things that drags on a divorce. The other issue is finances. So
Mhm.
finances, and especially with long-term marriages, after they've spent so much time together. I had a couple recently, 44 years of marriage, and they decided to call it quits. So imagine like how much entanglement and complexities have been in a 44-year long marriage. And now they have to spend as little time as possible to untangle everything. If they get along and they can compromise, then great. But most of the time, divorce is already emotional as it is, because when is a breakup easy? Breakups are never easy. So not only do they have to deal with the emotional aspect of a divorce, they also have to deal with this complicated financial split, and it just gets very messy. So that could drag on, because if it's too complicated, they have to hire a forensics accountant, someone who is an expert in dealing with numbers, to look through all the bank statements, all the years and history of transactions, tax returns, savings, 401ks, and try to split up everything. So that's another issue that can drag on a divorce for a long time.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for people either before getting married or when contemplating divorce? And I'm sure it's different.
Yeah. So for those who want to choose the option of legal marriage, I definitely recommend getting a prenup done. A prenup forces the parties to sit down with each other or with their attorneys who are doing the prenups and talk about everything they own, any debts they owe, and also what they expect going into the marriage. Do they want property going forward to be separate, or do they want it to be all community, or do they want it to be partially community, partially separate? And then also what they expect in terms of alimony and support. They can say, if we were married for 0 to 5 years, then no alimony. But if we're married for longer, 6 to 10 years or more than 10 years, this is how much support will be paid. So a prenup is really important. But even with prenups, there's no bulletproof prenup. A prenup is not filed with the court when it's first written. It's kept in safekeeping, whether in a safety deposit box or in your bedroom dresser. No one looks at it. If no divorce is ever encountered, then great, it will never be looked at. But if a divorce does initiate, then that's when the divorce judge will look at the prenup. And all judges are human beings, right? Unfortunately, there is quite a bit of inconsistency in the courts. I'm a LA County temporary judge, and as a temporary judge, there was one time where I was sitting in a seminar where they were teaching us, if you want to be a real judge, this is the application process. This is what you need to do to be a formal judge. And they basically said judges are assigned to courtrooms based on need, not based on qualifications or experience. So let's say, for example, my specialty is family law, but if they had a need for a criminal court judge, let's say there was a vacancy, I asked, would I be assigned to a criminal court? And they said yes. And I said, well, I have zero experience with criminal law. How would I be able to make orders? And they said, we have really good tutorials, video tutorials that will show you and teach you and train you. So it's very possible that you could have a family law judge that doesn't have very much family law experience. And in fact, I've been before judges who, let's say they had business law experience, or something that wasn't family law. And, the orders they made were not the best orders. And that's why we have an appeal process. There's a lot of appellate judges that will overturn orders made by regular judges. And it's it's just inconsistent. So you might have a judge who is not a family law specialist presiding over your prenup. And let's say they think, oh, the terms are not reasonable, we're going to set aside and overturn your prenup. Then you're back to square one with no prenup. And that's why I came up with, the concept of social marriage. Social marriage is the most it's the philosophy where you can get the most control over your case and not give the control over to a judge, who is a perfect stranger to you, who has never met you before and now has to make orders that you have to follow for the rest of your life.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that. This has been such a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for everything that you shared. I feel like I want to ask you more questions, but we're coming to the end of our time together. Before we say goodbye, though, Elizabeth, you have a free gift for our audience. Do you want to tell everyone what that is?
Yeah, actually, one topic we didn't get into is estate planning, which is really important as well, whether you're married or not married, because, putting your properties, let's say, into a trust could protect it from a spouse or a creditor, and it could also eliminate the need for your beneficiaries, which likely will be your children or family members, so that they can stay out of probate court. So my free gift for everyone today is an estate planning document. It's a questionnaire with all of the questions that you would need to consider when looking into estate planning. A lot of people during the pandemic came to me when their loved ones were already on the deathbed, because COVID hit so suddenly, and they didn't have estate planning done. And at that point, it was too late. We couldn't even get a notary into the hospital at that point. So do the estate planning ahead of time before health goes down. Do it when everybody is mentally and physically healthy and capable of signing the will, the trust, the power of attorney, advanced medical directive documents. So this questionnaire will help everyone plan for this process and know what to expect. So I can send, if people go to our contact page website, the website to contact us, and sends me a message, I would be happy to send over the estate planning questionnaire.
Wow, that is a great gift. Everyone, make sure you grab it. And again, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for everything that you shared with us and for your work in the world. And for everyone watching, we'll see you in the next interview. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.